So then we are back with more understanding from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage, so then we can understand the time of the end. As per then the instructions, we find then Yeshayahu the prophet, a person very acquainted with the time of the end. During his time, more than 1,000 years ago, he knew very thoroughly what would take place then in the future. From a time where he was then explaining those areas of the restoration of the time where not even the spring feast was yet completed. It was a tremendous amount of knowledge and understanding that he had as far as his tabernacling was concerned. So then at this moment we find ourselves then recuperating what was established in the past. As we understand, obviously, there are no news regarding then tabernacling, and in fact, from what Yeshayahu has explained, even Gentile level was already explained, because we understand the leadership of the world's market in terms of the decisions being made after the Chinese system comes. Then the sons of Ishmael are going to be then making decisions amongst the nations. Thus then you understand, time of restoration, the first contact with a human being and the Creator. So then, from this viewpoint, we understand there is not another system. Whatsoever system worldwide invented, concocted, or then established, then must be destroyed. The idea behind of these is from nation to nation should never be any kind of system in order to mix iron and clay. Daniel the prophet, the statesperson, was extremely clear, each nation to his own. Meaning some countries would be strong, some countries would be weak. In terms of a statesperson viewpoint, you can easily understand some nations would have, obviously the stronger nations would have ethics, at least great portion of it, because the prophet Daniel is from ethical understanding of tabernacling. So obviously you are reading from a sound understanding, and then would make them strong. Others would be weak. Economical system weak. But then Daniel the prophet did understand at the end. The ending time meant further in the future. Further in the future, when those understandings would then be completed, he already had the understanding that then the nations would try to come together and adhere to each other, but they would not. He was speaking from a statesperson viewpoint. The Eurozone is the perfect example. The Eurozone won't last for very long. Roughly another 36 months, and then when our monetary system then gets ruined, along with it goes the euro. Thus then the Chinese system comes in and then establishes itself. It's very obvious. So then, from the viewpoint of Yeshayahu, the restoration period also involved the Gentiles. How do we understand this point? First, from Yeshayahu the prophet. He said then the cities of the Messiah would be then laid waste for many centuries, at least 1,000 years plus. And then, because of the restoration period, even the Gentiles would observe the Creator's organization. The Gentiles then would take care of their vineyards and take care of their flocks. Speaking of organization. But it's not only an organization system localized but worldwide. Because then the plan of salvation is made known as per what it was previously. So then we are heading towards the autumn feast. So then, in terms of what was during the time of the deceit, or from 1009 to 2009, could the nations rely on those kinds of activities? Absolutely not, because we are then during the time where the Creator has taken leadership. Not because He is taking from the people, it's because it was already established a long time ago. It was not revealed, simply wasn't the time, but it was already set a long time ago. So then what Daniel said regarding the statue, you know, each country would have, or each kingdom would have a symbolized metal. And then we have to understand, why was then the Creator involved in showing a statue? Because it was very popular during the time of Babylon. People then bowing down before statues. They had a lot of places over there. They had sometimes cubicles, and people would go into those cubicles and spend their time and worship whatsoever else they were doing over there. But it was popular for them to go before the statues and bowing down to the statues. So because it was so evident, then the Creator smartly had to make a link from heaven's understanding and then what went on with the pagan cultures. So then when Daniel the prophet would speak, they had a hint of this person knows what he's talking about, because it was related with the culture of the time. But then comes the rock. Rock is the tabernacling. Comes the tabernacle himself and destroys the entire statue. But there is a portion of Daniel lacking. And those are the extra writings we must find, because in certain areas of the world you'll find then extra information from Daniel the prophet. And has to have an understanding of the time of the end, and must link with Yochanan. So when Daniel the prophet prophesied many centuries before Yochanan, Yochanan then explained of this time of the end related with gentile level leadership of the trade. Obviously, because Daniel was a statesperson. He did understand. And the reference of then kingdoms of the time was then given each of those kingdoms. Obviously, he's speaking of a system in the future where trade would be neutral in order for the tabernacling to continue. If you would understand only from tradeship itself, you would not have then tabernacling, because then trade would overpower tabernacling. You have both of them, because then has to have a leadership trades-wise neutral amongst the nations, so then you understand tabernacling. So there is a section of Daniel known as 12th chapter, but we don't go by numbers. We have to have a link with Yochanan related with the law revelation of the nation then in charge of trade and production of the time of the end. Unfortunately, got obscured, because when we read the ending of Daniel, we understand he spoke of the time of deceit, 1,000 years, people going to and fro. And then at the ending period of the 1,000 years of deceit, increase of knowledge. But there was more. The problem is the translators did not understand what it was. As you understand then the lacking of understanding in terms of the temple, and then Yirmiyahu the prophet spoke of and removed the articles of the temple and guarded them. You won't find the reference in the regular scripture, but you'll find in Maccabees. So there is existing scripture, but you have to go and find it. Why do we have this? Because then we found the objects in 82, and American archaeologists found the holy objects. So then it is true what was spoken in Maccabees. So then we are speaking of Yochanan, the 8th chapter, and then the leadership of this country, China, making then themselves as then the leaders of the world's market production. Daniel knew it. He was a statesperson. He was the dealer of the time. So then this section of the Daniel is stating then the time of the seat, people going to and fro or then roaming, and then knowledge would increase. It has to have another section over there somewhere where it explains then an area of a relation with Yochanan the Shaliach. And also then you link up with Yeshayahu the 61st chapter, related with then even the Gentiles would take care of their flocks and their vineyards. But it's not only acknowledging tabernacling. It goes beyond this point. Because we are speaking of the first son then taking the leadership of decision making amongst the nations. Then you shift from tabernacling to the first son, because we are during time of restoration. So it is a bit complex, but those are the natural facts of the multi-layers of Elohim. You have to understand as plural Elohim and His holy works. But then the first son also comes Ishmael, and then the purpose of the son, because we understand the Temple Mount is then guarded by the Ishmaelites. In order for this flow to go through perfectly, it has to have a neutral system amongst the nations. If you would give the power to the first son, then the tabernacle would not be doable. If you would give the power then to the Israelic people, then they would make this world their own kingdom. If you shift this world to the Chinese, then it would become absolutely robotic. So the balance comes from what Daniel said. Yeshayahu said, restoration period, including the first son. The situation is including the first son. So far, our understanding regarding the time of the end was mostly related with the Israelic lineage. But then the restoration includes the first son and his objective. So then you have to understand beyond, and then finding the information related with the prophets. Because Daniel was a statesperson. So somewhere along the line, when the translators were translating the holy documents, they did not understand. And they left some sections out of it. Then when we read the law or revelation given by Yochanan, dictated by the Messiah himself, because he was straightening out those churches over there in Asia Minor. And those are not churches. Those are holy cities or tabernacles. People were tabernacling over there, but then it was kind of not secluded as they should be. So then the Messiah himself straightened them out by writing them Hebrews. 100% tabernacle related. So then at this time of the end, we must find the rest of the information from Daniel. has to have some extra information from the original documents, must have special wordings over there in the holy language of Hebrew, not related with tabernacling. But it might indicate then a preparation for tabernacling based upon these neutral system. Has to have some special wording. Must study Hebrew and find the original manuscripts. But as we understand from first and second tabernacle services, those are completion of words. It can't be Mishkan because it relates with the first tabernacle service. Has to be plural, or Elohim. And then can't be mitzvah or mitzvahim because it's related with laws. The completion of the first was already completed. So when Daniel the prophet was explaining the time of the end, he was speaking of the restoration period, and there are special words in Hebrew indicating it. So then obviously Daniel the prophet did mention regarding then the great country of China, but those were then in words where we don't have the record. Because you have to have a neutral system amongst the nations to show you tabernacling. It can't be the system itself, it can't be the Yitzhayelic lineage, neither can it be the Ishmaelic lineage. And then the prophet knew it. We find the record in Yochanan. We must find the record in the prophets. So please stay tuned, much more coming up.